Good evening. This is On the Campaign Trail. Every week we track key issues, moments, and personalities in the long run up to Election Day. But we want to be clear about the map we use. We know the democratic project is in great danger, and that shapes how we navigate our way to the May 9 elections. It isn't just elections as usual. On the campaign trail seeks to make sense of the elections. We will try to discern patterns in the election landscape, determine paths to victory, discuss relevant policies, seek useful perspectives, all while keenly aware that the anti-democratic clock is ticking. In 2022, hashtag we decide. Without neglecting the other basic questions, on the campaign trail, we'll ask how we decide and why we decide. I'm John Nery, and you are on the campaign trail. Like Senator Laila de Lima today, Antonio Trillanes IV was in detention when he first ran for the Senate in 2007. His victory against great odds was a surprise to many. This year, Senator Trillanes, or Sentry, as he is more familiarly known, is running for a third term in the Senate. The target of organized disinformation campaigns since at least 2016, he has rebounded in recent surveys. He is now 68 days from Election Day, within striking distance of a third Senate seat. But Trillanes is not only a candidate for re-election. Backed by his Magdalo party and base, Trillanes has proven to be a key leader of the anti-Duterte and now the anti-Marcos opposition. He has taken active part in internal political analyses and campaign strategy. Tonight, he joins us on the campaign trail to discuss his reading of the election. Good evening, Senator Trillanes. Thank you for making time for our program and welcome.
Good evening po, John, and to our viewers on on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Sen. Maybe I can start we can start with some scene setting. You've been in many of the sorties and rallies with VP Leni Robredo and Senator Kiko Pangalinan since the official campaign period began on February 8th. Which sortie or rally do you remember best or impressed you the most?
Okay. For the outsider or the layman, if they try to observe in terms of quantity or the passion of the Team Leni Kiko rallies, then they would say it's generally about the same. The youth are very passionate, and the volunteers are very enthusiastic. But for us, we've been trying to do some sensitivity analysis on these rallies. We have seen some differences. For example, in the Bicol region, aside from the fact that it is the hometown of VP Leni, the local politicians also came out in support of VP Leni, and the support went down to the grassroots. But for some rallies, it may seem the same in terms of number or enthusiasm. But if you go out, since we do rounds as well to the different towns and public places, you will see that the level of enthusiasm is not equal to that of those who attended the rallies. So it means that more probably it's just a concentration or a gathering of all the Leni supporters in the area. And eventually it would show in the survey, which right now as we speak, we're just about done finishing the field work for our early March survey.
Sen, can you talk a little bit more about the strengths and weaknesses of the Robredo Pangalinan campaign from your perspective as a candidate on their Senate slate?
Okay. The strength really is it's a volunteer-driven campaign. VP Leni has been conducting different or attending different activities organized primarily by the volunteers on the ground. There are a few uh, events organized by the local candidates, but they are far in between. Mainly, it's driven by the volunteers, and that's the common ingredient between the Pinoy campaign in 2010 and the Duterte campaign in 2016. So we have that as something in common. But the disadvantage sometimes is the, the volunteers or some of the Lenny supporters would have that false sense of security after watching the mega rallies of VP Lenny. They tend to assume that because of such impressive optics, that she's already ahead of Bongbong Marcos, and that may lead to some form of complacency
Mhm.
on the part of the the volunteers. That's why we do after this survey, and we are seeing, of course, that Bongbong Marcos is still ahead. We're going to um, disseminate this information, these results, to our supporters so that we can keep them to we keep them motivated and driven to uh, go to our ultimate objective, which is the victory in May 2022.
Sen, a couple of weeks ago, I wrote that in contrast to surveys, maybe mobilization is the message for the Robredo campaign. No, the fact that there are large numbers of people who rally or join the sortie, and that the level of enthusiasm is really high, and that many
Yes.
volunteers are joining. That's a major indicator, right?
Mhm.
But you're
Yes.
saying that you don't want the campaign supporters to fall into a false sense of security. So how do you manage that? How do you balance that? Those two things. There's a need to boost morale.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as in the surveys. At the same time,
Yeah.
there's a need to steal the resolve. How do you balance that?
We just need to remind them. We just need to keep on pushing them. We know that the volunteers have already given so much. They have sacrificed so much resources and energy, but we're going to ask for more. We're going to ask them to go all out because there is no margin for error in these elections. If we if the Filipino people would pick the wrong candidate, then that's it. As you mentioned, the democracy project is in danger, and not only that, the economic collapse is even more imminent.
Mhm.
So we just need to keep on reminding, keep people's feet on the ground. Despite the indicators that things are changing, there are political alignments and political shifts on the ground. But from what I am seeing as a student of quantitative research, some areas are different from the others, even though the level or the optics of the rallies seem to be the same. So we're noticing the difference, and that's one of the things that we're going to trace to the campaign team of VP Lenny.
Sen, one more question about you and your role as a candidate on Vice President Robredo's Senate slate. I personally understand the Robredo candidacy as a twofold response. First, to the opposition's cry for change, and second, to the need for good governance felt by a greater constituency, not just those
Mhm.
who self describe as opposition. I want to ask, how do you see your role as a candidate on our Senate slate? Is your role to consolidate the vote of the opposition or to reach out even to those who do not see themselves as opposition but want a government that works?
Well, right now, well, to be honest, I'm more of an observer. Every time I join the VP Lenny Sortis, because she's doing all the work. She's touching so many people with her presence, her mere presence, and also her speeches. So I'm looking at uh, how these words and actions affect the people on the ground, because right now we can't afford to do anything that would harm the Lenny Robredo campaign. But if they ask me to do something and say something, I'm ready to go every time.
Thank you. Now let's talk surveys. If I'm not mistaken, you were the first political leader to warn the Robredo campaign, I think in late
Mhm.
October.
It's
The
true.
first surveys after the filing of certificates of candidacy showed a surge in support for Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Maybe first, what do you think explains that surge?
Okay. Well, let me just put in a minor correction. We reported the internal Magdalo survey
Mhm.
reported that Bongbong Marcos was already number one, um, even when the name of Sara Duterte was still included in the list of prospective candidates, and that was in June of
I see. Mhm.
2021. And in November, late November of 2021, we were the first to report that Bongbong Marcos reached as high as 59%.
Mhm.
And the reason for that was the unification of the Marcos and Duterte forces.
Mhm.
So they just added up, plus the shock and awe effect of that unification. And but we expected that to stabilize at some point, and that's exactly what happened in January, or for that matter, February 1. When we had our next survey, it went
Mhm.
down. Then, right now, we expect it to continue to go down. Now, that's the reason, primarily, why Bongbong Marcos was way ahead. Of course, remember, the Marcos family invested heavily on
Mhm.
their social media infrastructure. They were able to control the the medium for information. That's why they were able to rehabilitate their name, put in positive content to promote the Marcos brand, while at the same time targeted Lenny Robredo and other members of the opposition. They were able to do this for 6 years now, and during the Duterte administration. But we detected that they started this as early as 2012. Yeah.
Uh, Sen, I'm raring to go into the details of the uh, current survey that you're doing. No? The field work,
Yeah.
as you said, is almost complete. But before
Mhm.
that, can you give us a backgrounder on these Magdalo internal surveys? I'm not sure if you can share all the details, but give us an idea what what makes it different, and then why do you rely on these surveys and since you entered politics?
Okay. The Magdalo survey actually started as early as 2004. Of course, back then it wasn't Magdalo yet, but the research design of our pollsters started way back, and it was first tested during the 2004 elections.
Mhm.
Then eventually, when I ran in 2007, we tried to approach it scientifically, or more grounded in research. So we use this same design, and the difference between our research design with the Pulse Asia and SWS is we stratified the samples, the respondents into levels based on the voting behavior of the Philippine electorate, meaning it's not homogeneous, it is heterogeneous. And we track the voting preferences per region as one that is differing from the other, and within a region the provinces differ from each other. So we try to stratify further up to the provincial level our respondents. That way we can get the pulse in every corner of the country, and not do it the same the way that Pulse and SWS would do it, wherein they would pick a province in, let's say, Mindanao, and use it as a representation for the whole Mindanao. It doesn't work that way. Um, so our research design is different, and plus our distribution of respondents is equitably distributed to the provinces based on actual COMELEC data. So that's the difference. And ultimately, the results in 2007, we were able to actually accurately predict that I would end up in number 11, whereas Pulse and SWS missed me by a very wide margin. So Pulse Asia had me at 20, number rank 20. SWS had me at number 15, rank 15 or 16, I think, just a little over a week before the elections. So that's my personal experience. And we have been
So the proof
employing
of the
this survey.
pudding,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
So the proof of the pudding is your own personal experience.
Yes, yes.
That's why you rely on these internal surveys. That's what
Yeah.
you're saying.
And yes, and they can actually Google that. If they would look at the Pulse and SWS survey in 2007, the
Mm.
last one before the elections, they missed me by a wide margin. And then let's go back to the 2004 elections. They missed FPJ. They both of them said it was GMA, wherein ultimately Namfrel said FPJ won, right? Then Pulse Asia also missed Binay for vice president in 2010. They said Marojas will win as vice president by 15%. You cannot um, miss it that wide. But then, sadly, mainstream media continue to use information by these pollsters as though they're infallible. But of course not. They have been missing time and again. And internally, we've been using it. So we were the first to report that Binay and Marojas would be too close to call, and that ERAP already has overtaken Villar in 2010. We were able to report that Grace Poe would be number one. Both Pulse and SWS had her at number five, I think. So these are some of the things that we have taken note.
This is all fascinating stuff, Senator. Maybe
Yes.
some academic scholar can take a look at your previous results, no, and do like a history, do an in-depth study. But let's talk about. So you've done at least 4 or 5 surveys for the 2022 elections, including one that showed early enough that Marcos Jr. was going to lead the presidential race. Now you're working on the March internal survey.
Yes.
You said you've almost completed the field work. Is it possible at this early stage for you to give us an indication of, uh, uh, maybe the direction of the trend
Yeah.
or whatnot? Yeah.
Yes, and that's the other thing that makes our survey important and relevant, because it is almost real time. The field work is ongoing. tomorrow would be the last day for two more provinces. But then we were able to get already the raw tally of all the fieldwork. So we're getting the results in real time. Whereas Pulse and SWS, if they would do the fieldwork now, it would only be reported 3 weeks or even 4 weeks after. By then, that data has already expired because uh, there's a huge turnover of information and activities in that span. Anyway, based on the indicators right now, they the lead of Lenny Robredo in her home region, the Bicol region, has
Mhm.
increased further. In some regions in southern Luzon, in Region 4, for that matter,
Mhm.
the lead of the Marcoses has went down, or the gap has narrowed.
Mhm.
Uh, Region 6 is now a going for Lenny. It's almost close, whereas before it's still uh, led by Mr. Marcos.
Mhm.
So we're expecting a shift to of Region 6 to pink in hopefully by the time we're done tallying. Now, for some areas in Mindanao, the numbers of Bombo Marcos are holding. And that's the thing that the Lenny campaign must address, because we if the numbers are too wide, or the difference would be too wide in that area, then she may not have enough votes to in Visayas or even Southern Luzon to offset that lead. Now, another good indicator is um, in Metro Manila, the
Mhm.
gap is narrowing also. And historically, Metro Manila has been the bellwether of presidential elections.
Uh, Sen, that's very interesting. It's not yet possible to speak in terms of totals, national totals. It's too early. Right now, you're still looking at raw data from regions.
Yes, regions and provinces. In northern, for that matter, in the so-called solid north, the
Mhm.
numbers of Marcos are holding. And that's the thing. We have to admit that we cannot delude ourselves into thinking that that let's say the Twitter campaign, that the solid north has been broken, or some Lenny volunteers in the area are saying that they're campaigning very hard. Yes, we appreciate that and we acknowledge that, but the numbers right now are showing that we have yet to make a dent in the campaign in those areas.
Sen, I had on this program last week, Cagayan de Oro Mayor Oscar Moreno. Um, we discussed a few things. And one of the things that struck me was that it seems that at, I don't know if you share my view, but it seems to me that right now Ferdinand Marcos Jr. can win the presidency without winning Mindanao, but Vice President Leni Robredo needs to win a substantial number of votes from Mindanao in order to become president. Is that the right read?
Well, that is one of the tracks to victory, because in elections like these, there are several tracks. If even if Marcos wins, let's say Mindanao, but if Leni Robredo would um, overcome Marcos's lead in the Lingayen Lucena Belt, plus the lead in uh, Bicol region, Region 6 and Region 7,
Mhm.
the votes there may be enough to propel her to victory. So there are so many tracks to victory, and what Governor Moreno said, it could be one of those tracks. But I don't see, to be honest, I don't see Leni Robredo winning in Mindanao. I don't see that. The best that we can hope for is to narrow the the margin of difference and get the votes elsewhere.
Yes, in fact, I saw a report from uh, an organizer for the Robredo campaign in northern Mindanao, Region 10, saying their target is to get 25% of the votes, and I think that's a more sensible, uh, more achievable objective, right? So if you get 25% of the votes, you're looking at 25% of maybe 3 million for Region 10. I mean, that's already a considerable number.
Yeah.
That would be the way to go about it. But by the same token, Sen, I think that's also the objective, as I understand it, of the campaign in the so-called solid north. When
Mhm.
Marcos ran in 2016, he did not get 100% in any of the three regions.
Mhm.
He got between 65% to 75%. So again, you if you can bring that down to 60% or 55%, it's still a solid majority for him. But you're able to, especially in Pangasinan, especially in that vote-rich province, that would be one way to go about it.
Yes, that's exactly correct. We need to get as many votes as we can in those areas, despite the fact that they would still eventually win it. But we need to get as many votes as we can. Then try to pad on to the areas where Lenny is leading, so that we can try to get as many votes to offset those weak areas.
Sen, you're the most prominent ex-military man running for national office. If you don't mind, I have a few questions about your relationship with the military establishment. Your alma mater, the Philippine Military Academy, hosted another homecoming day a few weeks
Mhm.
ago. If I remember correctly, a few years ago, the junior officers wanted to invite you as a guest speaker, but senior officers tempered their enthusiasm. What is your sense now of the military establishment's support for your candidacy, your own personal candidacy first?
Well, I believe ultimately, since right now I'm just running for the Senate, they know what we have contributed to the military establishment, and also even to in terms of raising their salaries and pensions. So ultimately, they will reserve some space for me in their I'm very much in communicate or in communication primarily pro Marcos or pro Duterte, but they're still voting for me because of those contributions to the military establishment. But ultimately, it's just a very small sector. It may be influential at some point, but the Philippine electorate is so vast. We're looking at 65 million, and
Mhm.
I think we would that would put it into context.
But it is a key national institution. What is your sense
Yeah.
naman of the military establishment's reception of Vice President Leni Robredo's candidacy?
Okay. If we're going to put it in percentages, if we're
Mhm.
talking about the officer corps, it's gaining ground. But of course,
Mhm.
since Senator Ping Lacson is also a PMAer, he would
Mhm.
be able to garner a significant number of votes from the PMA alumni, and because there is that it's a man's world basically in that area. That's why they may have some reservations about the perceived weaknesses of VP Lenny in regard to the security sector. But these perceptions are changing as well because there are so many retirees who are lining up for the VP Lenny campaign, and we're feeling them on the ground. I've been meeting with them, so it's part of the changing political climate as well, and it's also affecting the PMAers.
Sen, in the program last week, Mayor Mayor Oscar Moreno told this story that when Vice President Leni Robredo landed in Cagayan de Oro, she went through welcoming rites in Camp Evangelista, and then Mayor Moreno said that he found out from the officers there that the wives of the officers instructed them to all take selfies with the vice president. I just want to know, is there something there? I mean, is this indicative of anything, or kwentong good time lang?
Well, actually, ano po yan? I will affirm that because we are based on the data. The bulk of the middle class has shifted to Leni Robredo, and the AFP officer corps is part of the middle class. So yung mga kaibigan ng mga misis ng mga officers, they are Lenny already, and they wouldn't want to be out of or be the deviant in the group. So most of them are already with Lenny. Kaya nahihila yung mga officers and the retirees, and that's the basic explanation for that. It's the circle. Even if may mga biases yung iba, but marami ngayon, even the chat groups of PMAers, maraming outspoken na for Lenny, primarily because of the influence in the circles that they're moving in.
Sen, if you don't mind, just a few more questions.
Yes.
Let's talk Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. You know her quite well. It was under her presidency that he mounted the Oakwood mutiny. Fast forward to 2022. It is now conventional wisdom to say that Gloria Macapagal Arroyo brokered the political alliance between Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Sara Duterte. Do you share that view, that she is in fact the brains behind this political alliance, that she plays a very key role?
Well, yes. Based on our inside information, she was the one who brokered that the tandem, and she made it possible. And it just speaks of the kind of candidacy that we're looking at. This triumvirate, or put in the other scoundrels in Philippine politics, then we're really in a very, very bad prospects should these people win.
Another question about another person that you know also. You served in the Senate with Ferdinand Marcos Jr. for 6 years. He served there from 2010 to 2016. Can you tell me, what is your take on his character? What do you think of him, having worked with him for 6 years?
Okay, John, I will try to be as objective in my description. Well, personally, he's an amiable person. Hindi naman siya maere, hindi naman siya bossy, or he's marunong siyang makisama. In terms of output as a legislator, the Senate records would bear me out that he only passed 3 national bills as sponsor or as author, and 2 of those laws are postponements of the SK elections, and the other one is the right-of-way law. Now, for 6 years, if that's the output, then you can judge him based on that. Ito na yung capacity niya. And hindi mo naman siya makita about sa mga investigations on corruption. He doesn't have an anti-corruption agenda or any reform agenda. He doesn't have an agenda for the poor or the marginalized sectors. He's just there. So ito yung advocacy, no advocacy even, ano. So ito lang, it just fell on his lap yung mga batas na ito sa committee niya. So he needed to sponsor them. So yun na yun.
What about in 2016? You ran as vice president against him. What is your? How would you describe him as a candidate?
Ganito po, no? Ito yung we've been profiling the Marcoses all these years. Ang very disciplined sila sa kanilang messaging. Palaging positive aura. They won't hit anybody. But then mag-e-employ sila ng mga tao who would hit their enemies, ano, or yung mga kanilang makakatunggali, ano. So that's what they do. Kaya maririnig mo sa kanila is ano lang, parang friendly banter, positive politics, ganun lang. Kaya ano, they're sticking to that. Kahit na anong counter sa kanila o anong bira sa kanila, palaging ganun lang. And yan ang training nila. Ngingitian, pero iba yung bibira. Na sa kanila mo rin naman matitrace.
Then, last question. Maybe we can go back to to a higher perspective on the elections. It's 68 days to election day. What do you think are the key milestones, and what are the factors that would help the Robredo campaign win victory on May 9?
Well, the next milestone that we're looking at would be the Holy Week, because this would be the first Holy Week na magkakasama-sama ulit yung mga pamilya. And historically, that's when people start talking about the elections. Ngayon, ano pa lang normally mga top of mind pa lang or may mga inclinations pa lang sila. But then they start firming up their decisions pag Holy Week na, because that's when they engage. That's when they talk among themselves, ano? Sa kahit na anong gatherings. So yung mga taga Manila pumupunta ng probinsya at yung and vice versa. Kumbaga, doon siya yung lugar niya for elections. Yung at this point in time kasi, yung iba talagang nalalayuan pa, they're just busy living life, ano? Kaya yun yung tinitignan natin na kailangan we should kumbaga pour everything itong mga next few weeks para by that time yung mga true believers ng Lenny Kiko, when they start meeting with their families and friends, sila na yung mga ngampanya doon sa mga grupo na yan. And of course, another milestone would be itong mauuna pa pala, ang Holy Week pala natin is April na. So mauuna itong local elections, yung start ng local elections.
March 25.
Ngayon, yung mga local candidates, wala pang presidente yung iba, no? Kasi they're waiting for the Duterte administration to pick their chosen candidate. So nag-hedge pa yung iba. So ngayon din yung opportunity ng Team Lenny na mahila sila, no? Marami nang nahihila. And even quietly, nag-pledge sila ng support, or they're allowing the Lenny campaign teams to do their thing in their areas. So na-encourage yung Team Lenny sa mga ganong mga pangyayari. So that's the first milestone. Then the second one would be sa Holy Week, na kung saan masisemento na yung mga decisions.
Maybe sige ako, one more question, Sen, no? You are in Batangas.
Yes,
I understand you spent the whole day campaigning in Batangas. Batangas, well, Senator Ralph Recto, who you also served with in the Senate, has declared for Mayor Isko Moreno. How do you think the politics in Batangas is shaping up? Does the Robredo campaign have a fighting chance in Batangas?
Well, based on our latest survey, the gap has narrowed significantly. Bongbong Marcos went below the 50% mark. He's now in the low 40s. Lenny Robredo would be in the low 30s. So nagnanaro na siya. When we started monitoring itong Batangas nung late last year, November last year, malaki. Mga 60% si Bongbong, mga 15% lang si Lenny. So drastically na-reduce na siya. Si Isko is also getting a significant chunk of the votes dito sa Batangas. But ano siya, he's at third place.
Okay, it's 8:41. We are 11 minutes over time. Senator Trillanes, thank you very much. As usual, it's been an illuminating time talking to you. Thank you for making time for our program.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, John, and to our viewers.
Well, that's it for us tonight. Join us again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Follow us on the campaign trail because it isn't just elections as usual. This is John Nery. Good night.